When I join a company, and it's usually a founder telling me, come on over, like, come work with me. I'm very blunt about how direct I am. And I don't care if you fired me tomorrow. Like, I gotta speak the truth.
There is no opportunity for you to be sloppy or expect someone to micromanage you. The bar has been raised.
With AI, you're not gonna have a traditional path. You won't be leading teams of 50 people anymore. It could be a team of 5 people and 30 bots.
Welcome to the next episode of the Entrepreneurial Excellence Podcast. So most founders think their edge is product capital or strategy, but today's guest believes the real edge has always been something else: people, and probably culture a bit too. After spending a decade inside high-growth startups, scaling teams, shaping culture, and sitting at the table for the highest stakes decisions, she saw a pattern that most founders miss. The difference between companies that stall and companies that scale isn't just execution. It's who's in the room when the decisions are made. She started in structured corporate environments, broke into chaotic, high-growth startups, and rose to chief people officer roles. And now she's building something different: a private invite-only network designed for the top 1% of founders, operators, and investors. She's the founder of the 5 to 9 Society, a curated network built on trust, discernment, and high-signal relationships. Christine Song, welcome to Entrepreneurial Excellence.
Thank you so much, Adam. Happy to be here.
The question I start everyone out with is in some ways really simple, but also really complex. How do you define entrepreneurial excellence? Like, what does that actually mean to you?
I think of it as how you see yourself operating within an organization. And let's say we think about it in a startup or organization where it's founder led. I believe very much in the basics. You got to work hard. There's a lot of people that want to get into startups and they're not hard workers. I think of discipline. You've got to have discipline to be able to hit your targets and to really hit that high achieving level that you want to hit. And at the end of the day, you have to find the greatest people to work with, people that are really hardworking, that are passionate about the space that they're in, and don't just see it as a job. This is something that they're doing to follow their North Star, to follow their passion. Um, there are jobs where you check in and check out, and then there are, big dreams that you can make by joining great companies. And so I think for that excellence that you're looking for, you got to find the right people around you to build something really great.
And so when you're describing it that way, I mean, are you saying that's being a great entrepreneur is one who is finding the people who fit all of those buckets? Or are you saying, and maybe it's both, that those people who fit that bucket that's also, they can be entrepreneurs in a sense themselves, entrepreneurs of their own career, and they should also fit that bucket?
Yeah, that's it. Like you want to find the right people to join your companies, but at the same time, employees that join the company can become entrepreneurs inside the organization. So for all the companies that I joined, I wasn't really coming in as an employee. Maybe that's what was on the paper and the contract, but I actually saw myself as an entrepreneur inside an organization. And when you think of yourself in that way, you operate in a way you operate in a way that really makes the impossible possible. You start dreaming and operating as if you're a founder. And I used to say, for companies that I joined that were founder led, I was almost like a founder led, operator. I wasn't just managing HR. I owned the HR function. I was hiring the best people to be part of the HR team. I was helping to shape the company and the culture and the values. And when you think of it that way, it's an immense opportunity to build the company of your dreams. And you don't have to be a founder to do that.
I think it's great point. How do you find people though who meet that criteria? How do you hire for that? And I'll say, like, this is actually a very personal thing for me right now. I'm in the midst of kind of rebuilding the culture on our go-to-market team. I actually let someone go this morning from that team. He was only with us for about 2 weeks, but partially it was because I just don't have any patience anymore. If someone just isn't moving quickly and owning outcomes and being incredibly communicative about what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, I don't have time or interest to watch over their shoulders all day long. And if they're not communicating with me about all the things they're doing and I want them to be pushing me to move faster. And if they're not doing that, I just don't have patience anymore for it. But I've also, the fact we need to do a reset means I've also failed. So
Yeah.
how do founders get that right?
You really have to dig into the person's psyche, how they think, because everyone uses AI to, answer all the questions at an interview. It's so easy to look up, hey, what questions will they ask me if I apply as a salesperson? The reality is you've got to go into the psyche of the person. You have to understand how they operate, what they're passionate about, how they work. And, I used to talk to my kids. I used to say, the biggest, travesty would be if you're lazy but smart. You're gonna go into organizations where they're gonna recognize you're really smart, but you're also really lazy. You've got to really show them what you can do. You've gotta talk to people to understand the way they think. What if they built on the side? What are they passionate about? When you talk to someone in an interview, you can tell that they're passionate. Like, I remember going into interviews and the hiring manager would always say, "Oh, man," he goes, "I could see that, like, that energy in your eyes, the way you talk about the role and the things that you wanna do." You gotta see that in somebody, and I'm not saying that everyone needs to be passionate and extroverted, but when someone's genuinely excited about the space that they wanna be in, like, you're gonna see that come through. And the second thing I'll say is you're not gonna recognize how good someone's going to be if you're not having those conversations. Don't leave the recruitment to your TA team. Don't leave it to some, hiring manager. You've gotta care as much too. Like, you've gotta have a stake in this as much as anyone else, and so even as a chief people officer, I did a lot of interviews. I met with a lot of people, even some of the most junior people on a team, like the go-to market team. I interviewed all of them because I really wanted to make sure that I vetted every single person coming into the company. And that means you have to take the time to do the conversations. You can't leave it to AI.
How much can you get through an interview versus actually seeing someone on the ground doing the work? In other words, there's a good argument to be had that like you should make your interview process as top notch as possible. It obviously helps in vetting people, and we've spent a lot of time on the other part of the business at Shore, at least, optimizing our hiring process. And even then, I think we get it wrong a decent percentage of the time. And this is like what we do, and we're pretty good at it. Versus and this is sort of what I'm doing with more of the go-to-market team to some extent, saying like, especially with salespeople saying, hey, look, you sound like you're passionate, but you're a salesperson. So I don't, kind of your job to sound passionate. I'm just going to see what you actually do when you get in the door.
Yep.
And like,
You
if you're making moves and moving quickly, great. Then like you're doing it and you're proving out that you actually are passionate and can move fast. And if you're not, like, I'm not going to give you a second chance. We're not going to keep working at it. We just move on.
Yeah. I would say when you're in the interview stage, if someone's passionate and they're telling you this story, I would dig in and go, What have you actually built?
Mm.
What books have you read? What have you studied on your own to tell me that you're ahead of the curve? You should know sales better than me because this is like what you're committed to. I want to know, what strategies have they built? Which networking groups have they gone to? Like, people that are passionate will self-develop on their own. You don't have to tell them to go to a conference or read a book. They're doing it on their own. So if someone's just kind of sitting there waiting to be spoon-fed, they're not gonna do a great job. They're just gonna be asking for instructions for tomorrow. The other thing I would say is be really clear about what your expectations are. So I hear from employees saying, I came into the company and they told me to work really hard, but they were really vague. Like, I'm not sure if I'm hitting my targets or not. I didn't even get feedback. Be really clear about what it means to win in the first week, the first month, the first 3 months. Talk about the targets. You're either hitting them or you're not. And if someone's not hitting them or they're struggling, do they care enough to come to you and say like, "Hey, I need some help. What can I do to get better? Who can I talk to who can give me a little bit of coaching?" I always find the ones that care so much are the ones that are going to ask for more time. They're going to ask for more help. They want more resources. And if you don't if you're giving it to them, you're giving that time and you're doing the player coach thing and they're not getting any better, they're probably not your person either. But most people who wanna do a really good job will really train themselves. They'll take in all the information that you give them. They'll, like, soak it up like a sponge, and they tend to do really well. But it depends on you, being really clear about what your expectations are as well.
I know, and that's fair. And I criticize myself in this scenario where I probably wasn't quite as clear as I should have been. At the same time, in my own defense, and this sort of interesting, just because this is very top of mind, but I think probably interesting to the audience as well. Um, for everyone that salespeople are hiring, I give them a outline of the first 4 weeks of what to expect, what to do, where they should be at the timeline. And this person wasn't paying attention to it, wasn't following that list at all. Another person, I let go a second salesperson a week ago as well, or 2 weeks ago, trying to keep moving fast. And that person literally, and I'll tell you why I did it. Well, one of the reasons why he asked me publicly, which was fine. I don't care if people ask me publicly. I don't mind that part. But
Mm.
like, he said, "Hey, like, what's the first month plan?" And I was like, "Oh, like, I'll make sure you get it." And then I double checked, like, "Hey, it was in your email. Like, I've now reread my offer email to you, and it outlines it." And I resent it to him. I was like, "Is this what you needed?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I forgot it was there." And I'm like, look, right now, your only customer is me as your boss. Like,
Yeah.
you're forgetting what I'm telling you. How are you going to remember what our customers are trying to tell you, and how you're going to follow up with them in an appropriate way? And I'm just like, it's too much for me. It's too much of a signal that you're not paying attention. And yeah, I don't mind. Once again, I don't mind the question, but if the question is something you should know that's like critical to your job,
Mhm.
come on. But
100%. You gave him the information. It's obviously he's being sloppy. He's not taking it quite seriously. And maybe this isn't the right environment for him. Maybe he needs to be somewhere where they're kind of micromanaging him. It really depends, right?
it does. And so then that leads to another question though. Does that world still exist? I mean, I don't want to AI is too much of every conversation I have nowadays, but like, does that world exist with AI? So what I mean by that, to be really clear, is I think we're moving to a world where, because of AI, there is no opportunity for you to be sloppy or expect someone to micromanage you. The bar has been raised. And if you're great, you should be enabled by AI. But if you're expecting someone to give you all the things and feed you all this information or what to do,
Mhm.
and you're just think you're going to get by because someone micromanages you, to me, that just doesn't fit in this new world we're in.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the there I think that there are certain people who are right for certain environments for sure. But there's also the way we, train people, like in schools, and the way we kind of develop them. We give them instructions, they follow it. We tell them to do this, they do it. Your essay must be 200 words long, it must be this. And people are used to being put into a box. And so these kids graduate from school, they go into the working environment, maybe they join a startup and it's very autonomous. You gotta move fast, you gotta be resourceful, you've gotta figure things out and solve problems on your own. And they're not used to it because they've been told, "Stay close to the leash. This is what you must do." And it's kinda like the it's funny because I've talked to a lot of people who hated school. I was one of them. Like, I didn't hate school, but I didn't love it. I think I wanted to think for myself. I really wanted to figure things out for myself. I have to get my hands dirty. I gotta get right into the work. If someone explains something to me, I'm, like, kinda playing it in my head, but then I'm like, "Okay, I gotta test it out myself to see how that works." And it's those people who tend to do really well, in, startup environments where it's very ambiguous. You gotta figure things out for yourself, and you have one manager taking care of so many people, they don't have time for you. But there are certain people who are better suited for the corporate environment. They have strict instructions. They have to stay in their lane. They're told what to do, and they do that really well. And I think right now we're seeing a lot of challenges of people wanting to join startups because it's sexy and everyone wants to make that big exit. Like, oh, do you hear about all the people that became millionaires? But the reality is, it's a hard environment to work in, and it's not cut out for everyone.
No, and well, yeah. So one, very much agree on the startup environment. I mean, people do think it's sexy, and it's like, no, like you either move quickly and get it done, or like you don't, because we just don't have time for it. But I would say, even with look, it's been a while since I worked. The last big company I worked at was Twitter. RIP the Twitter, to now being X. But like, I guess my question is, like, even big companies, stuff like that, do you still feel like there's an acceptance of people just like following the instructions, or is even that expectation changed because you see more and more companies cutting teams? They're saying, I want you to be
Yeah.
autonomous. I don't want you, don't expect to have tons of, I mean, I was reading about Facebook or Meta having, teams that now have one manager for 50 people. And it's like,
Mhm.
that's the world we're moving into.
Mm.
And so like, how does this apply to every company now? Like, are we just becoming flat organizations where the best rise to the top and then use all these tools to get their jobs done? Or there's still a world where
I
you
think
can't skate by?
I think the best will rise to the top, to be honest with you. And that's why, as these jobs are getting eliminated with AI coming in, the middle layer is kind of moving out. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be out of jobs, and it's going to be really hard for them to find the right roles. I was just talking to someone recently who said, I would love an intro to this company. There's this job that I want. And I said, I actually know the person. I'm getting on a call with them next week. I'll put in a word for you, and maybe they'll want to meet with you. after I told this person, "Okay, now they wanna meet with you, they're excited." They're like, "Wait, wait, wait. I'm not sure if I'm ready for this. I don't know if I have the experience." And I said, I'm putting you ahead of everyone else that put in an application, but it's like, whatever you don't know, don't you think you're gonna figure it out? Don't you think you can solve it? Like, you're a smart person. You can build out, like, processes on your own. You can ask ChatGPT anything. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, I guess you're right." And then it was at that moment where I thought, "No, now that this is why I see people struggling. They need to kind of be in a box and feel that security of someone telling them what to do." And I'm sorry, but there's gonna be a lot of people out of jobs because of this. The world is changing so quickly with AI, and some people love it, and other people, they're so uncomfortable, which is a really scary thing.
It is scary, and yes, it's so. Unfortunately, in some ways, we're both in agreement here. But I think the wake up call is for everybody who's listening, who's an employee. You got to figure it out. Like this is on you. Like you are the entrepreneur of your own career, and if you're unwilling to take that and craft that career the same way that a founder might be doing that for their own company, then honestly, like I have no respect for much of your career. Like if you're out of work, too bad. Um,
I know.
like so
The world, it's never gonna go back to the way it was, and so you either see it as an opportunity or a threat, and if you see it as a threat, like, there's no, rainbow at the end waiting for you, like, you're gonna be in a really difficult position.
how do you think teams should, or people on a team in this sort of new world, how should they be guiding their own careers? Or how should managers or founders be allowing them to guide their careers? In other words, like, should the manager be saying, hey, like, I'm going to create your promotion path? Or should it be, I'm the employee and I'm just going to say, I'm going to go figure out how to make this my career and be really successful at this role. And a good company will recognize my value and promote me because of that.
Yeah, I think that there the latter really resonates with me, and I'm seeing it more and more. If you look at all these AI, software, there's, like, AI for, like, coaching, pretty soon, like, there'll be no HR managers. Who needs the HR business partner? The AI coach is gonna tell you what to do. They're gonna guide you. And so, all the micromanaging is gone. Like, people are moving faster, with technology, and so there is an opportunity for managers to do more high-level work instead of managing people. And there's an opportunity for employees to really scale their careers, to leap across many layers. But the problem is that I think there are some insecure leaders who still want to control the environment, who still want to know what's going on. You won't know everything because everything's moving too quickly. So I do see some clashes. I see some leaders who say they want their employees to make decisions, to be autonomous, but they want to know everything they're doing. They want to see it on the dashboard. They want you to tell them in real time at the meetings. All of that has to change. You don't need to have that many meetings. You don't need to tell your manager everything that's going on at the end of the week. Like, things are moving much too quickly. And so I think we're going to balance things out and start seeing that probably in the next 12 to 18 months.
But so how do you get so I mean, a few questions there. Like one, how do you make sure the team is getting results though? Like you need I don't need a meeting for all these things. And we actually
No.
it's funny, we had a team discussion today on sort of this sort of about how do we make sure our clients are aware of what we're doing and doing great work there. And then we talked a little bit about the team and those pieces too. And there were some differing perspectives, but I would say like I feel, tell me maybe this is wrong. I feel like it's important, especially early on with someone, to make sure they are over communicate with them. Essentially, over communicate about what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're getting it done. And hopefully, very quickly, they say, I trust you. Awesome. Just keep getting results. Like, you know what your goals are and results, keep getting those, and I don't care. But you can't also go to the point where you're not communicating at all because and if you're not getting clear results,
Yeah. Yeah, so I think of it as being proactive, communicating proactively. Don't wait for your manager to ask you like, "Hey, what's going on with that thing?" Be proactive. "Hey, I talked to the client. We're gonna meet next week. Here's what we're gonna talk about. I think it's gonna be really good." Just give proactive prompts, and there's so many tools that you can use to communicate with your manager. You could go on Slack, you could send an email, you could send a voice message. There's so many ways you can do that. There's no excuse not to do that, and it's just a form of managing up. It's so that your manager can understand your work style, understand how you're getting things done, then they don't worry as much anymore. And the reality is you gain that autonomy and freedom by communicating more, because eventually your manager knows how you work. They know, they're confident that you're going to get things done. You're pretty proactive. And so they kind of let go a little bit, and that benefits you as well. But you have to know how to manage up to be able to do that.
This is such a pet peeve of mine is how important it is to like over communicate in every relationship. To be clear, it's not just work. Like with your significant other, you need to be clear. Like if my wife disappeared for 24 hours and didn't send me a message or let me know it was up, I'd be very worried to start with. And then of
Yeah.
course, if that continues to happen, maybe my worry turns into like, wait, what else is going on that I don't know about or something like,
Yeah.
and that's what starts happening. But if you communicate all the time, you don't worry, you don't have anxiety. You go, like, cool, I trust you. I don't need a lot more. But what also shocks me, and I don't know if you have any advice on this, is like, how do people get good at communicating? Like, I find that people either find it difficult to do or are worried. They're like, I don't want to bother you too much. I'm like, no, please bother me until I tell you otherwise. And I say the same thing for our clients. Until you bother our clients so much, like, I don't need any more information, you haven't done enough. And yet people routinely don't over communicate. They under
Yeah, they don't over communicate because, this whole thing about, "I don't wanna bother you. I don't wanna, keep sending you pings." You don't have to do that, but I think the best way to communicate, I always used to say, is understand how your manager operates and just make it clear, "Hey, do you want me to give you an update on Mondays? I'm happy to do that first thing when I get into the office. Here's what I'm gonna be doing." And then an update maybe on Friday to say, "Here's what didn't get done. Would you prefer I share with you, before I make a big decision, do you want me to send you a quick ping, say, "Hey, just letting you know that big client and I have that meeting coming up in an hour. Here's what we're gonna talk about." You gotta make these things clear so that you understand each other and you understand how each other works. Eventually, your manager might say, "Hey, I know everything's gonna be good. I know how you operate. You're probably gonna give me a report at the end of the day on Friday to tell me, like, what didn't happen." Because you know each other, you know how to communicate, but a lot of people that are new, joining a company for the first time, working with a new manager for the first time, they don't do enough of that, and I think that's where the communication breaks down, and then you don't build trust immediately. You get closer to trust as you over communicate, and your manager will probably say, You don't have to ping me every 30 minutes. Let's just save that for the Friday meeting." Like, find a way to understand how to work with one another.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, obviously, very much agreement on this. And once again, going back to the employees like building their own promotion paths or their own plans. What do you recommend? And I think we kind of got into it so fast. I should mention for everyone listening, like Christine has been like chief people officer and head of culture and all these things for like 10 different organizations. So you've seen it so many different times. So you really had this experience. How much clarity should companies provide when it comes to promotion paths and what that looks like versus saying, hey, help create your own, or you're the entrepreneur of your own career. And once again, like an experience where we have with Chore, we have very clear outlines of what promotion paths look like. But even then people say, I don't understand it. Or I've had other people tell me, well, with some other people on the team, I've asked them to help create their own paths for promotion, help explain to me like what that looks like in their mind. And the feedback has been, well, I kind of expect my manager to build that for me. I don't, I'm like, it's collaborative, but like
Mhm.
you take the first stab at it. Like, sure, I can go into ChatGPT and build one really quickly, but like, I think you should take the first stab. Like, what do you think the right mixture of that is? Not just in past tense, but also once again going to this AI world we're in.
Yeah, totally. There is a past world and a new world coming up. So in the past world, I'll say, there are career paths. There are, your individual contributor and you want to get to a manager level, and that was the traditional route, and there were ways to get there. And I think every culture has a philosophy about how they promote their people and what that means internally. As we're moving into this, world where hierarchies and levels are kind of getting crushed down, everything's new. I'm not sure if you've heard from other HR leaders who said, like, all these compensation structures, throw it out the window. We need to start all over
Mm.
again. With AI, you're not going to have a traditional path. You may not strive to become a manager anymore. You may have a non-linear path within an organization, and it's going to be much leaner. It's going to have less levels. It's gonna look vastly different. You won't be leading, teams of 50 people anymore. It could be a team of 5 people and 30 bots. It's a completely different structure, and so a lot of HR teams are scrambling right now with, salary bands and job levels and what it means to be a manager. But I always go back to the philosophy of the organization. What is the culture of your company? Like, I've worked with founders who said, look, titles don't mean anything to me. If you're doing an exceptional job and you're reliable and you care about doing a better job than I want you to do, you are like leading the charge. You will always have a job here. You will be paid exceptionally well. We're going to give you bonuses. We're going to do all this stuff, but get those titles out of your mind. Like, I don't give a damn about titles. I don't want you to care either. The CEO stands by that, then, there's a lot of people that are gonna be like, "Okay, you know what? I'm operating in the way that he wants me to be, and I'm gonna do an amazing job." But too many people focus on, give me, a path to where I wanna go, tell me what I should be doing next. It's the whole spoon feeding thing. If your employees are asking for that and they're asking for details and everything, that's probably the culture of the organization that you have. If you're not communicating what your philosophy is of how you operate within this organization, then your employees are clueless. There has to be better communication. And so regardless of what you believe, communicate it, get it out there, make it clear. And I think it's the fairest thing leaders can do.
So I look, obviously, very much in agreement. But then, how does a company fix that mindset, right? If that is the mindset, right, as just for my own company, about 45 people, we have people ask those questions, and like I'm trying to starting with the go to market team, but with everybody, change the mindset. Like, hey, look, and we tell people to be clear, even on the rest of the company. I'm like, look, we will promote people quickly and give them. If you're great at your job, I don't ever want to lose you. Like, I want to make sure you are well loved, you are compensated above and beyond what normal looks like. You won't have to ask for that if you are delivering on expectation and beyond expectations, and come up with those expectations, right? Don't It shouldn't just be what I tell you to do. You should be like, hey, like I think we could do this, or I started using AI to do this thing and it got us this results. And like you will quickly get to a point where if the CEO is halfway smart, they'll say, this is someone I don't want to lose. And so let's
Mhm.
bring him into a new role in a new position, or make sure they're compensated so well that they're worth it.
Yeah.
But even though I think we have that culture to some extent at Chore, at least I've said it a lot, I'm not convinced like it really exists is a cultural milestone. So how do we change the culture? How do companies reframe things?
I would ask, are your leaders having the same conversations and saying those things consistently? Because if your leaders aren't doing it, they're not doing their jobs. You can't be the sole person saying this all the time. You can't have the megaphone trying to remind every single person. It's your leadership team that you have to depend on. So every time I joined a company, I would talk to the CEO and I would say, like, what are you trying to accomplish with the culture and how you communicate? And they would tell me their wish list. But then I would always ask, are your executives and your leaders following the same, strategy and plan? Are they communicating? They always say no. I'm always the one that has to say it. I have to be the cheerleader. I have to be the CEO and founder that has to say this. And a lot of the tough things that you have to share, like, oh, this year bonuses are only going to be this percent. Why does the CEO have to say it? Why don't your leaders talk to their teams? Why aren't you all on the same page? I think there is a disconnect with leadership.
Why aren't they on the same page, right? If those are your leaders, people who are most aware of these things, what's failing in the
Yeah. It's funny because, okay, so when we came out of COVID and, a lot of people were like back to work, whether you become hybrid or 5 days a week in the office, there were a lot of employees that didn't want to come back in and they wanted to stay remote. And I said, whatever you believe in, you have to stand up for it. And every leader has to stand behind you. You have to be united together. Well, there were some leaders telling their teams, yeah, I don't want to come back
Mm.
to the office either. But, the CEO wants us to. That's not leadership. That is like throwing the CEO under the bus, and suddenly this leader is behaving like an employee. Everyone has to be on the same page. So basically, when I came into that organization, I said, we are going hybrid. We were locked down, not because we wanted to. There was a pandemic that happened. That's why we were locked down. But we never said that we were going to be a remote company. We are going to be hybrid. So you're going to be in the office 3 days a week, but 2 days a week, you get to work from home. And there was an uproar of people saying, no, I don't believe in this. And even my manager doesn't believe in this. And I said, well, we're not going to change that. And, if this isn't something that you believe in, there are remote companies out there that you can join, and we truly want you to be happy. It may not be what people wanted to hear, but you've gotta have conviction when you say things to people. Otherwise, you're challenging people to say, like, you're being wishy-washy, right?
Do you totally? And first of all, you can't be wishy washy, and you have to be like, "This is the policy. This is what we're doing." Do you let managers go then if they're not, if they are acting like an employee and undermining you as CEO? Like I will say to be clear, in case anyone listening, I don't think any of my leaders in my company do that, thankfully. But
Mhm.
like, if that occurs, do you let those people go and be like, "Hey, look, if you were concerned about this or you have disagreements, like, let's have that discussion 100%. But once we made a decision as a team, like we are on board and united. If you are not on board with that plan, like you won't be a part of it."
100%. I do, and it's not like I'm trying to rule with an iron fist, but the leadership team has to be united together. You're building the company together. People are looking at you to communicate, how we work and how we operate. You can't have leaders just making up their own rules and blaming it all on you. And so what I would truly believe in is the most senior leaders at the company that obviously report to you as the CEO, they better be aligned because if there's a misalignment, they're probably the first ones that need to go because now they're kind of influencing the teams under them. And what happens is pretty soon, like it sets a precedence. Other people are going to say, well, look, that leader says this. Why are you saying this? There is no unity there. And it means that everyone's on a different page. That's really dangerous as a company matures.
What are the types of cultures that you think the best companies have? Like, what is a great culture for a successful entrepreneurial business look like?
Yeah, I'm really attracted to early stage companies because I think they have the least amount of bureaucracy. You operate really lean, and you're communicating really well because the team's relatively small. But companies that operate very autonomously, that provide high like entrepreneurial kind of freedom.
Mhm.
And I know a lot of CEOs and founders say that's the kind of company they want to build, but sometimes they bring in entrepreneurs and then they can't handle it. They're like, "Oh, they're making decisions on their own and I don't like it. I want to be the one to like approve every decision." Then don't ask for that kind of environment. So I think it really matters what your values are in a company. I think that if you do want to create that autonomous kind of fast moving organization, you've got to create the values around it. You've got to reward it. You've got to take the good with the bad. Sometimes there are going to be mistakes that happen because people made a decision without going through you. But make it clear what kind of decisions they can make and when they should kind of get approvals because the stakes are higher. But I think the worst kind of environments are when things aren't clear, when clarity isn't there, if people are kind of talking through the grapevine and no one really understands what's going on. Those are the most damaging organizations. And so you kind of think about like I know everyone talks about the Netflix culture deck, but it was so simple but clear. And they made so many examples of like what they meant by each value. And I still read that to this day. Like every now and then I'll pick it up, read it, and go, man, that was like such a great deck. It was just so straight to the point. And it's a dream of every founder to have an environment like that. But it's not an easy environment to work in. Like their leaders get performance reviews live. Like it's live. And everyone will kind of they'll be like, okay, Adam, you step up, and everyone's kind of giving you the feedback and they're sharing it in real time. And it's a really difficult environment to work in. But for those who did have an opportunity to work in that environment, they loved it. They learned so much, and it wasn't always easy. But obviously, some environments are built for certain people.
And okay, so actually, speaking of Netflix, but you have like a Netflix environment, you have an Amazon environment, you have Elon Musk company type environment. Which ones are there any kind of like heuristics or types of businesses that you think really lead to outsize success, however you want to define success in a sense?
Yeah, that's interesting. I was talking to someone recently and we were talking about like, cultures that seem really great. You don't really know until you're in the company whether it's actually great or not, but what do you see that's like consistently shows it's a great culture? So I'll give you one. I look at the culture of Zapier, and I find it really like
What is
refreshing.
their
So
culture like? I mean, what are the describe it maybe?
yeah, like when I go on some of their workshops or I sign up to like, and I'm seeing how their leaders operate. They are so autonomous. They're very, they genuinely look like they really enjoy their jobs. Like, they really enjoy what they're doing. They're not doing, a workshop because they have to. They genuinely love educating people. I was on a workshop yesterday, and they were showing us, like, "We're gonna go through how to create your own bot to go through your calendars each day, and it's gonna be a really simple way to, work with Copilot, but let's all do it together." And, like, the way they went through it, and they're saying, it's okay, you can use a free account, you don't have to have a paid account, we just want you to use it." And it's like, when people operate like that and they genuinely enjoy what they're doing, you start enjoying being part of that, and everyone there were about 200 people on this workshop. Everyone was so animated, everyone loved it, they were asking questions, they wanted to go to part 2. The person was pretty young, he was probably just a manager hosting the workshop, but genuinely enjoying it. I've been on, workshops with their chief people officer as well. Amazing guy. He's like, they all are really happy doing what they do. And, there's cultures out there where people work hard, but they're not happy. Like, they joined the company because they love the logo or they want a big exit one day, but they're kind of miserable and they say really mean things about the company on Glassdoor. I don't know about Zapier, but they look so happy. And everyone that I've ever met who represented Zapier are, like, really passionate about what they do, and they just wanna share their knowledge with everybody. I love that.
Is there an underlying current across like the best companies you've studied or worked with that like a cultural current that leads to success? Like in other words, I might say like they just work super hard and yeah, like it's hard, like they're having fun, of course, but like they're working really hard and getting great returns. I mean, like, is there is there a mindset or something shared across the world's best companies?
Yeah, I truly believe that you can work hard, but you have to have fun. And I don't mean force fun, like, we're gonna order pizza and everyone's gonna stay behind and have beer. Like, no, truly have fun. You enjoy the work, you enjoy the environment. You have, big goals to hit and, everyone's challenging you, but they're rooting for you. There's this really optimistic kind of feel in the air. And I've worked in companies, like, I remember I met with one, founder, and he said, like, "We have really strong talent density, Christine. You're going to love the environment because I know you care so much about performance." But people were so miserable. People hated their lives. Like, they were working around the clock. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. Every day was a grind. And if you were just sitting still, it was like, do something. You show the CEO that you're working hard. And the CEO had high anxiety as well. He was not a happy person either, and there was a lot of, like, stuff going on with him, but he kind of pushed that down into the culture, and, pretty soon, people didn't wanna join that company anymore. They had a really bad reputation, they couldn't attract top talent anymore, and a lot of their highest performers, people that believed in the company left, and they left in swarms, and once you get to that point, it's hard to kinda do a turnaround. You kinda need to bring someone in to turn the whole thing around.
How does then a like leader understand themselves well enough to do that, right? Because I mean, what you describe sounds terrible, but also your company is, let's say, I went to like Tesla or something, right? And it's kind of well known of being just like a grind to get things done, and yet they clearly have had amazing talent that stuck around and that Elon
Yeah.
Musk truly trusts. But he also works really, really hard. Is maybe in even Amazon, especially in the early days when Jeff Bezos was there, clearly had like worked really hard. But is part of it maybe the founder doesn't like I don't like I'm sort of what's the critique of the founder, right? Where is the founder going wrong in the example you just gave? Is it partially that they think they're sort of an Elon Musk and it turns out they're maybe
Yeah.
not quite that smart or what not quite that good? It's like what is missing, right? You can be an Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos if you are actually better than everyone else. Like if you are smarter,
Mhm.
better, and harder working, you will attract those other people. But if you try to be that way, and you're maybe not quite that good,
Yeah.
then those people just say, I'm not learning from this person, and they're just throwing their anxiety in my face, and I don't need
Yeah.
what is what's missing once again between like these greats who built something amazing and the company you just described, where it's like maybe they were onto something really good, but if you hemorrhage all your talent, you have nothing.
Mhm. Yeah, so you look at some founders and they truly are geniuses. They are the subject matter expert. They're the ones who are reading every book, trying to figure out, solutions. They're such experts that people will wanna come work with them because they're like, "Fuck, I'm gonna learn so much from this person," and just being in the same room with them, like, I'm gonna absorb all that knowledge. That makes them wanna work just as hard, if not more. You're, like, surrounded by people who are just as passionate, just want to learn as much, but they respect the founder because the founder is so incredibly smart. Then there's the other type of founders who want to mimic that and they want to create this high performance kind of talent density environment, but they're not actually that smart. They're relying on their team to figure it out, to figure out the roadmap, to figure out the new features, figure out how we can make more revenue. But they're not actually the smartest person in the room. And I'm not saying you have to be, but if you want to create an environment like Elon Musk did or Jeff Bezos, you got to kind of be as smart as them. You got to be the Steve Jobs. But there's a lot of CEOs that are just pushing other people, but they don't actually have something that makes them unique, something that's so valuable. Like I've met CEOs that don't have a unique talent. They just wanted to build a business. They wanted to be a founder, but they're not like, I don't know, they're not the expert on spaceships. They're not an expert on like the functions of a mobile phone. They just want to kind of push everyone else and put the problems on them. And honestly, if a founder doesn't know what the roadmap of the company should be in the next 3 to 5 years, why would some employee know more than you? And I see some founders expect their employees, their product team to figure it out. No, you as a founder should actually know more than your product team. That I truly
No,
believe
of course. I mean, I would completely agree. But how then are those companies going to fail? Like, how do those founders get something going in sort of that sort of? Well, I'll ask that question to start. Like, how do those? What happens with those sort of companies? And like, how should a founder interrogate themselves to know what they're like?
I think a founder needs to have people around them that will speak the truth. And there's a lot of founders that don't want to hear it, quite frankly. They do have the emperor's clothes on, like 100%. So when I join a company and it's usually a founder telling me, come on over, like, come work with me. I I'm very blunt about how direct I am, and I don't care if you fired me tomorrow. Like, I gotta speak the truth. I cannot lie to you. I would vomit in my mouth if I had to lie to a founder and say the things that they wanna hear, but somebody's gotta tell you the ugly truths. And I don't say it to beat this person down, but it's kinder to speak the truth and tell the CEO what's actually going on than to lie to them and the company's failing. So I always used to say to founders, if you want to build a company that's going to last the test of time, hire really honest people around you. Your executive team is the person that needs to speak the truth. And the only way they'll speak the truth is if they care about the company more than their job. I know it's not easy to find people like that, but I always used to say to founders, find people who care so much about the company that they're going to do the right thing. And that also goes for the founder. Like I think of an example, founders sometimes don't release people that they should be releasing. So like the one thing that founders have always told me was sometimes they held on to certain people for longer than they should have.
Like, wait,
And I've met yeah, and it's hard because you build relationships with people, you're with them 24/7, and it's hard to let them go. But when I've talked to founders, the one advice I used to say is, think about your company first, not as your baby, but that's your higher calling. If you hold on to this person, is it gonna damage the company more? And they're like, "Yeah, actually it would, because this person can no longer manage this function. They've hit
yep,
their ceiling." Then I always say you've gotta do the right thing and let them go because you've gotta think about the company, right?
correct. Yeah, I know, and that's a lot of people do make that mistake, and I don't think they think through it the way they should. How then? Like you work with obviously lots of really successful founders in the 5 to 9 society and just within your network. But obviously, very few people are Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. Yet there's many successful entrepreneurs out there. What are the qualities that those people have? Right, the more normal ones that maybe all of us can truly aspire to be like, not the sort of immortal founders who are out there.
Yeah, I always think about if you're a founder and CEO, in the early years, you're going to work as hard as everybody else and you're going to get your hands dirty and you're going to be solving problems and you'll be sitting in meetings and doing a lot of the grunt work. As you start scaling as a CEO, you've got to really hire the people around you that are going to own the functions that really know what they're doing and they're going to help to make the company really successful. So you've got to let go of things, but you've got to also do your job as a CEO. And the greatest thing the CEO can do is to communicate. You're the communicator outside of the communications team or marketing or HR. You are the communicator. You're the one who's going to say things that are important. You're going to repeat it. People need to hear it 3 or 4 times before it sits in their in their minds, and they understand you're going to spend time talking to the people that you're going to inspire. I talked to one CEO and I said, God, you have such an iron fist and you love to like, tell people to fucking smarten up. I said, but you know what? When you're being very motivating and you're sharing a message during town hall and you give a really motivating message, that resonates with people so much more. I said, I can see their eyes widen. I could see them like really like understanding what you're saying. And I said, you could get through to them more by sharing these messages more often. And he's like, oh, I just don't want to do it. I just want them to get their work done. And I don't want to be that motivator. And I said, but this is the job that you signed up for. You're the CEO. And there's a lot of people that join companies because they want to work with that CEO. So you've got to really think about where your time and value is gonna make the biggest impact for your organization. And you can't do the things that you did 3 years ago. You've got to evolve as a CEO as well.
Yeah, no, like, you gotta keep evolving for sure. And so maybe stay on that topic a little bit more, like not or more about just sort of like the people in 5 to 9 society and how you find them and what that like looks like. What does what does like great or excellent look like in the society? Maybe tell people a little bit more about it overall.
Yeah. So 5 to 9 Society, it's for founders and operating leaders. Mostly it's for people who work in venture backed companies, PE backed, or really like, high growth companies. And, I've heard some people say, like, oh, but I'm part of a founders group and I'm just with founders. I think that's great. I think the biggest problem with just being part of founders groups is that it's the group think. You're just with founders all the time. So founders are talking about very specific things. And I think being part of a founders group for a founder is good, but you should also be part of a group where you're with other operating leaders. And the reason why I say that is I've worked with many founders who said, the company's scaling. We're now passing 100 million, ARR. I've got to like scale, but I don't really understand what a CRO does or like what does a CHRO do? Like I have no idea besides hiring and firing. And it's because they don't spend enough time with diversified leaders, with people who are CMOs, CFOs, COOs. And so I always say if you can spend time with other leaders and you start to learn from their craft and you see what great looks like and you surround yourself with other talent besides founders, you become a better CEO because you need to look at the organization holistically and you need to understand every leader's function better than they do because they report to you. And the only way you're going to do that is to surround yourself with people who know their craft really well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so how do you pick those people? How do you know who knows their craft really well? And how do you make sure like this is always a challenge for everybody. So how do you make sure you're curating the right group for 9 to 5 society, but let alone like, going back to the hiring piece, hiring the right people and hiring
Yeah.
for their job, not just good talkers.
I when we bring in our operators, so mostly they're C-level executives, if I haven't worked with them and I don't know, their reputation, I ask for reference checks. And I ask for 2 references. I do all the reference checks. I don't use a service. And basically the reference is usually with their CEOs, people that they've reported into. And I just ask the CEOs, what was it like working with this person? Were they dependable, reliable? What was the quality of their work? Would you work with them again? If you had to stand in front of a mountain and tell the world that you stand behind this person, like that is your reputation. Are you telling me that you would work with this person again and do that? And, they really think about it. And to be honest with you, some CEO said, no, actually, I don't. They asked me to be a reference. And to be honest with you, like I didn't think, when you really ask me these questions like this, no, I wouldn't wanna work with
Mm.
them again. So, they did speak the truth. The reason why I do the reference checks is because I wanna bring in people who have strong integrity, strong work performance. They really care about the work that they do, because whoever comes into the society, once you're in, people are gonna refer you. They're gonna be like, "Oh, hey, I'm looking for a really good CMO. Who's the best CMO you know?" They will rely on people in the society to be vetted. And so we refer people out, we recommend people. Um, we want to make sure that we're recommending people that we would stand behind. And so that's why I do the reference checks. And I've rejected a lot of people who have lofty titles, but really bad reputations. Yeah, they've left companies where they haven't given any notice period. They've done this and walked out because they felt like they could. And I always say, like, your reputation will exceed itself. Like, it's your calling card as a leader. Like, you've got to stand behind that reputation. Back in the olden days, your reputation was everything. And I think we forget that. But that's why I do the reference checks. I want to make sure that I bring in strong people.
I mean, we do reference checks for every hire we do at Chore, my company. Do you feel like a lot of companies don't do reference checks nowadays? Like,
Yet they don't.
really?
They don't because they think that, "Oh, well, if they give me a reference, it's obviously gonna be with someone who says the right things." Not necessarily
Yeah, no,
true.
totally.
I think when you know those services you use where a company will do the reference
I
checks
actually
for
didn't
you?
know
I
this
don't.
existed, but I
Yeah, they're the worst. Corporations use that a lot because, I don't know, I guess they're so big, they don't have time to do reference checks themselves. But when I do reference checks, like, I'm actually, like, really asking the person, like, what is this person actually like? I don't just ask, like, check mark questions. I remember, I was asking this one person, about a reference check, and I said, "So you're telling me this VP of marketing is, like, the best out there?" She goes, "The best." I said, "'Cause you worked with her." She's like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I noticed at your company, you have an opening for a VP of marketing. Why don't you hire her then?" And she was stunned, and she said, "Well, she wouldn't be the right fit." I said, "Why? But you worked with her, and you just told me she was the best VP of marketing." And she said, "No, she wouldn't be able to survive in this company. Our performance expectations are much higher." And that just told me, ask the right questions. You've gotta probe, and you've gotta care enough to ask those questions because 'cause you're doing the reference check for a reason.
Yeah. No, it's so well said. It's shocking. Yeah. Okay. On that note, too, another question then around like sort of hiring a little bit. Walk people through one of my pet peeves. A lot of founders don't realize the cost of hiring and hiring wrong. So I feel like a lot of times I come across founders and say, "Oh, like I'm going to go hire for this role, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to bring it in house. I need this role. I need someone to go run this." And they just think I'm going to plug someone into this to do this thing for me. And they don't realize how painful that is and can be and how costly as well. Because like the data, at least that I've seen, is around like the amount of the cost to recruit, like hire, then train, manage that person, and them turn out to be a success or failure. Like when you add it all up, like the chance of failure is pretty high.
Yeah.
And all that turnover and disruption, the cost is incredibly. I mean, it's something like I don't know, 2.5x like their salary, like
Yes.
for annual salary, something like that, right? Like,
Yep.
but why do companies continuously make this error, right? So I'm trying more as a founder and leader to say, I'm actually not going to hire someone new for this role. I'm going to do my best to outsource it or automate it potentially,
Yeah.
instead of bringing someone new on board because the likelihood of failure is too high, especially for something that I'm not great at. I'll just hire an outsourced team to do it. Like, why don't more companies think that? And why do we still come across the mindset of like, I'm going to hire someone and they're going to be great? And it's like, you are not, you're only thinking about their compensation, like salary, not all the other costs.
Yeah. I think that people try not to outsource everything because they wanna be close to certain
Why?
functions. S So I'll give you an example. So let's say HR. You can outsource HR. You can do it easily, and you can just get someone to do your payroll, they could, like, fire you. Like, they could just get contractors, fire people, like, you could just do that, but I think some founders wanna have the HR person right beside them, and I've worked with a lot of founders like that, and I asked why, and they said, "I want them to represent the culture. I want them to help me to communicate better. I want them to kinda keep the temperature of what's going on in the organization. They're like my right hand. They're the person that's gonna really help me to see what's going on when I'm not around." And I think for them, that function was so important that having someone external, kinda manage your HR wasn't it wasn't something that they wanted. They wanted to be really close to it. So it really depends on what you wanna outsource and not. Like, people have said the same thing about, like, sales functions or, marketing. When they really believe in something, they want it to be in-house. It's that whole thing about, do you wanna be a remote company or do you wanna have some presence, in real life? And I've heard a lot of founders say, like, if people are in the office and they're together more, you actually move faster, communication, gets out there faster, everyone's there to see what's going on. You're you're in it, you're in the arena. But when you're remote, it takes longer to get communication out there. There isn't a sense of urgency that closeness is gone. And so you kind of lose the essence of building this great culture. And so it's outsourcing is kind of similar to that, but AI is allowing us to do that more, keep teams lean, outsource a lot of things in a better way. I think outsourcing has gotten better than it was in the past, but it's like offshoring. It's the same thing. Do you want your teams local, or do you kind of want to go through the grind of explaining what you need done to an offsource
So it's
team?
funny, you're jumping ahead on one of my questions about like remote
Yeah.
versus in person. But before you get to that question, like keeping on that point for a second, like, do you think it's a bit more of an old school mindset though to say like I need to have this stuff in house? Like when you're describing the HR person in house, I can see why a founder might say that. But what I also see when you describe that is like maybe there's a breakdown in the process. Like if you need a third party on your team to give you a pulse check, what are your
Yeah.
managers doing? Shouldn't they be giving you an update on like the pulse of the company and how people are feeling? Shouldn't they be
Yeah.
great shouldn't every team member be a great representative of your company? Why do you need
Yeah.
an extra person to do that? It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily make sense to me.
Totally. So then I think of it as, so who's keeping your leaders in check?
Mm,
Who's making sure that the leaders have the support, the leaders are all aligned, that you're communicating what's most important to the leaders, that you're providing the support to all the leaders so that you're giving them the tool belt so that they can go out and do their jobs as the best leaders of their teams. So it's like somebody's got to own it. And so I had a founder once, he asked me, "What's your job in HR? Like if you could sum it up in one kind of sentence, what is your ultimate job?" And I said, "I support all leaders. I can't do things for them. I can't fire their team members for them. I can't onboard every employee, but I can be the one person that supports all the leaders. Do the quarterly leader, offsite. What's most important? What do we all have to be on the same page with? What do we agree that performance looks like for all of our teams? What is the culture that's most important for this organization? What is our value this year? Like, what is our North Star?" All of that is like you're kind of like partnering with the CEO to support the organization. And the reason why the HR person does that the most, and I'm not just saying this because I'm in HR, 'cause I left, but it's because HR sees the organization holistically, just like the CEO. HR has executive peers, but you're actually not, you're a level above them because you are performance managing your executives as well. And a really good HR leader is so objective that they could also step out when they say, like, "You know what? The job's gotten too big for me, and I don't think you need me anymore," or, "I'm gonna send the elevator back down." Like, you've gotta hire a really objective HR person who doesn't take advantage of the autonomy, the power that they have, the authority that they have, and is really level-headed.
yeah, no, I love that. When is a good time for a company to bring in an HR leader? Like how big is the company? When do they know they should actually bring an HR leader in?
Yeah. Most people say, like, it's when you pass the 50 to 70 person, head count, but it I'm gonna say it again, it depends. So you look at Netflix, employee number 2 was Patty McCord. She was the chief people officer. She's the one who helped build that culture deck. And when she asked, Reed Hastings, "Why me? Why am I your first hire?" He said, "Because culture is so important to me that I wanna do it right from the very beginning." Did you ever hear about his story about his previous company?
I think I've read this story, but I do not recall at all.
I listened to him on a podcast, and I never forgot it. He had this previous company just before Netflix, and, he sold it. He wanted to get rid of it, and there was something that he learned from that experience. He said, we had a company full of dummies, and they said, like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "There were so many rules, and every time someone did something wrong, someone created a policy, and there was so much bureaucracy that nobody could do anything unless you told them what to do or what the policy was or the instruction." And he goes, "So we had a company full of dummies."
Mm.
And he said, "I never wanna operate like that again." So when he sold that company, he took the money that he made, went to Patty McCord and said, "We're gonna start a new company, and it's gonna be unlike anything anyone has ever seen before, and I learned my lesson from my last company, and we're gonna create high autonomy, high performance, but I need you as a chief people officer to help me do that." And they built something obviously beautiful that everyone wants to copy, but it's very difficult to do. But, he saw that value. And so some people may not see that value. Most people wanna hire a chief people officer when there's a lot of problems in the
Mm.
company. I've been there and I've joined companies where I've had to do a turnaround. I've had to release the whole executive team and start all over. We've had to change the values and how we operate in the culture. A complete turnaround. And it's really hard to do, but I'll only do it if the founder says, I'm committed. I'm going to take the bullets with you. I'm not going to make you do everything. We're going to do it together as a partnership. And that's the only time I say, okay, I'll help you.
Does it actually work? Can you actually turn around a team where you have to fire the entire executive team and restart?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is because here's a damaging thing that founders do is sometimes each person that they hire is, like a individual, person who has a great resume, great logos on their resume, great schools that they went to, Ivy League, but there's no essence about that person that kind of permeates within the organization where, like, what are you actually hiring for? You're hiring all these individuals who look like, golden statues, but they come in and they all have a mind of their own. There's no unity of thought. There's no coming in and going, we as leaders are going to scale this business like this. And this is the path that we're going to take. Everyone's just doing their own thing. And I think it got worse when the pandemic happened and suddenly everyone had to like work from home. Everyone was kinda operating, with their own system, and then when we came back into the office, it was like there was a lot of, polarizing beliefs, a lot of people doing their own things, people who believe going back to remote and hybrid, and one particular company I was at, I was like, "None of your executives are aligned with you. None of them think in a united way, and every single person is running their own company within this company." And if you kind of give an opportunity for these leaders where you can say, "Look, this is what we believe in, and this is how we're gonna move forward." And for maybe half the team that doesn't believe in that, you let them go, let them go build something else and let them be in the right environment. But you as the founder, you're building a culture, you're building an operating system, and you've gotta stand by it. So there has to be unity doing that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And once again, I think what founders forget a lot of times, especially first time founders, is when you let someone go, it's hard. It's always hard, but you're
Yeah.
giving them a gift too. Like if they're not doing great, it's probably obvious to them as well. And like just
Mhm.
being at a company does not make them a better person, doesn't make them better at their roles, does not support their long term success. And it's also, of course, hurting your company's success. And so, like, no one wins. And so you might as well
No one
go and move it on, even if it's tough. And they might not want to admit it. They might not even recognize it fully. But if that's the situation, you just got to move on from it. So going back to one of the questions, right? Like remote versus in person. What's your preference?
I prefer in person. And it doesn't have to be 5 days a week. Hybrid does take more work, but I do believe in person. And the only reason I say that is if you wanna be fully remote, you better be a damn good communicator. You better set up really good systems. You've gotta set up great processes. You've gotta be proactive and get all that set up really well. And I don't know a lot of people who are that organized and do a really good job with all that administrative stuff to set the company up for success. The easiest way to get aligned, I believe, if you're lazy about admin and setting processes, is to be in the room together, is to be together with people who are like-minded, really passionate. And let's put it this way, I feel bad for young grads joining a company where they're fully remote and they've never experienced in real life because you learn through being in the room, absorbing what you see, what you hear. This is why, like, the bullpen is so good for salespeople because you hear what the guy next to you is saying on the phone, and you're like, "Fuck, that was such a good line. I'm gonna do that next time." But you would never know. And so I see it as even in leadership, people look at how leaders behave, and you have a bunch of really great leaders. People look at that and they're like, "Oh man, I wanna be like that person. When I become a leader, I wanna be just like them." Because you look at that, you watch how they behave, you hear what they say, you see the body language, you see the facial reactions, and this really helps you to grow faster and scale.
So I will take an unpopular position and say I'm much more on the remote first and only is the way to
Mhm.
go, actually.
Yeah.
Um, Partially because I believe it forces you to be great at the stuff you just described. And I think the companies of the future have to be great at communication, have to be great at writing things down, have to be great at tracking everything that they are doing. And frankly, like, and you see this more and more. I mean, Meta just announced like they're basically tracking every click that an employee is
Yeah.
doing. That's really, I get why employees are pissed that a lot of them don't like that. It feels like spyware on their computers. I understand all that. At the same time, if a lot of the discussions are happening in meetings that aren't being recorded and you're not tracking all these things, then you don't have that data to help build the next generation of systems. And being remote first means you're always tracking everything. We always have recorders in all of our calls. Um, all of our calls are group calls and all those things. Now, there are downsides, right? It's you have to work harder at culture. And I would say
Yeah.
we probably don't have we probably don't have that amazing quote unquote culture in some cases that maybe in-person companies have, but we also can move a lot faster. Number one,
Mhm.
we also can save a huge amount of money on not having an
Yeah.
office. Like if you have an office that's used 3 days a week, that's 4 days a week that is not used. Like that's insane.
Yeah.
That's a huge expense. I'd rather return that money back to the team and company and pay better or reinvest that and go to market. Um, there's so many other things you can do with that money. And once again, you can hire the best people all over the world instead
Yeah.
of in your local regions. And so to me, that trade-off makes so much more sense. I know it's unpopular though. I think people do. And I will, there's some caveats. Like if you're a small team, if you're 2 to 5 people, maybe even 10, and you're just figuring out what your business is like, yeah, be in person because like you just have to move so fast.
Mhm.
The moment you move past that and you start having some people like, well, we want to hire this great engineer, but he happens to be living, in some other state. The moment you make that option,
Mm.
just say screw it, like go fully remote and just go deep and go that way.
Yeah, I think that you can make a killer remote company if you set everything up in advance. So I also think that there has to be better communication. Onboarding has to have a solid onboarding program because no one's going to be there telling you what to do. Um, you got to set all that up. And a lot of people don't. Like they just say, we're going to be remote, but they don't set up any processes to allow people to be successful. So I remember because we had just come out of the pandemic, I was looking at some blog posts of people who work in remote companies, and they said, here's some tips of what you can do to make your company really successful as a remote company. And I read through like all the things that they wrote in this deck, and I thought, oh my God, I see companies that don't even do one out of those 10 things. So if you set it up properly and you try to make it the best that you can so that when people come in, they know like what's expected of them. They know where to find everything. That's the best case
Well,
scenario.
well, once again, and that's what every company, even if you are in person, should do. Like that's sort of my point. Is like these
Yeah.
companies are replacing, are using the excuse of their laziness
Mhm.
for why they can't be remote. So you're essentially being lazy as a company. So you're saying because we're lazy, we're going to spend all this extra money and force people to commute to our office and hire people only in our local region and have to hire all these extra people to walk them in the door and get them their badge and whatever all the other things you do in person just
Mhm.
because you're lazy and you don't set up the actual processes that you should have anyways. And once again, unpopular opinion for most people, but to me, it is a ridiculous way to run a business. And you're missing
It
out on
is.
so much upside.
There's a huge upside. It's just a lot of people are lazy in setting it up. I also think, I don't know, I think there's a great environment for every type of person. I think some people are excellent at remote and other people, they don't have the attention span to read documents. They're not polished enough to look at you like it's all in the files. You just have to look and read it and they don't want to. They'd rather just talk and move faster. And so everyone kind of operates differently and their brains work differently. But I think that's the beauty of choice. Live in a democratic society where we can choose the best environments that we could work in, and people will choose what's right for them, right?
No, look, and for sure. And this is where I think people they don't think through those things as much as they should. Like, oh, this sounds remote. It sounds
Yeah.
great. It sounds wonderful. And I'm like, yeah, look, it's not for everybody. To be clear,
Yeah.
I don't mind at all sitting in front of my
Mhm.
computer in my home office all day long. And part of it, I'm on calls all day, so I feel like I'm interacting with people. And like, if I were in an office, I'd just be annoying people because I'd still be on calls remote anyways. So for me, it maybe doesn't matter. But don't get me wrong, like I used to love going to the office. Like it was so much fun. It was great. I
Mhm.
loved it. And I missed that part. But I don't know for the company. Like I love going to the Twitter office. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't know for Twitter itself as a company if that actually got them any value from me having to
Yeah.
have this fancy office in downtown San Francisco and feed me lunch every day and all these other things. And I get to sit there and shout with everybody and hear about what their cool things they're building here. And then I have to walk 5 floors to this other meeting or this other meeting. And then you run into people in the hallway. It was fun. But
You got your steps in, okay?
but that's not, and I would argue that's not the company's that
Yeah.
responsibility to do that.
Yeah.
Like the company's
No.
responsibility is to give me all the opportunities to build a great career for myself and
Yeah.
achieve wonderful things. I mean, it should be fun, but not in like, I got to hang out with people. It should be
Yeah.
fun because like, man, I'm building cool stuff.
Yeah, totally. I think I think there's so many different ways that you could build a company. I mean, my sweet spot was really like the hybrid environment where in the middle of the week, Tuesday to Wednesday, Thursday, you're like getting things done with people and you're doing the team meetings and everyone's like cheering like, "Yeah, we believe in this thing. We're going to launch something really exciting." Mondays and Fridays, heads down, don't add any meetings. Get your quiet work done. Be creative. But it's hard. Again, even doing hybrid work, it's even harder to manage hybrid than it is remote fully or in the office.
100%. We didn't talk much about it, but I want to spend a few minutes talking about your own career, right? Your career is like one of like three acts you kind of talk about it this way, right? Corporate, startup, builder. Why did you have those different pieces and how has it shaped your thinking about building your own company now?
When I graduated from school, I ended up in corporate, as most people do, and I hated it. I wanted to stab my eyeballs out, and I thought, "Is this gonna be the rest of my life? Like,
Most people
this
who
is
are that way,
horrible."
right? Most people are in some corporate-esque job.
Yeah, but you know what? In hindsight, and it's always in hindsight, you learn something. It taught me, discipline, like, don't send in shabby work, like, make sure you've checked everything. Um, they taught me about how to communicate properly. When we were communicating at town halls, it wasn't in front of, like, 50 people, it was literally in front of thousands of people, and so you had to make sure you communicate well, you perform well, you have a presence. And you know that stupid line, like executive presence? There's something to that where, like, I've had, executives at startups that don't know how to behave properly when they're standing in front of an audience of
What do you mean,
employees.
like,
And so
like, inappropriate, or they just don't know what to say almo
yeah, inappropriate. I've had, get this, chief anti-money laundering officer, pretty lofty title, and this person worked at a lot of banks but when she was in front of people, she would do the stupidest things. She would come to town hall and she'd be drunk and she'd be slurring her words, or she'd be like lying around and kind of like lying down with the sales guys on the couch, like just really inappropriate things that you shouldn't be doing
insane.
as a leader. Yeah, it was quite insane. And it was in front of everybody. And so
How long did she keep her
for
job?
not long.
Okay. Okay.
I was the HR person.
Well, no, but I mean, this is but before you got there or something like that, maybe she was there for a long time, like, that's
It was weird when I got into that organization. They tolerated a lot of things, but they didn't know how to deal with it, and their company had gone from 30 people to 200 by the time I joined very quickly. They had 3 rounds of funding, and, they had brought in all new executives, and there was no sense of how to behave appropriately. The CEO didn't know how to manage his own executive team, and again, by the time I came in, I had to do a turnaround, and it's not fun to do that, but, like, someone's gotta do it, and it was either I do it or the poor CEO was gonna bawl his eyes out, and he didn't
I
know
mean, it's
what to do.
is that and is the way to do that, is that partially, like, just, like, you gotta if people are not performing and you're not getting it done, you just is the harsh way to do it is you just start firing people and say, "Look, here's why we're letting this person go."
I always wanna give everyone an opportunity to change, and so what usually happens is if I'm coming in to do a turnaround, we'll say, I'm here at the company, my role as a chief people officer. Here's what that entails, and I'll kind of explain to them what it is. I'm not there to just hire and fire. I'm talking about the strategy. Then we say, we're going to be really honest about where this company has failed in certain areas, and we're going to make changes. You're going to see the changes happening very quickly. And here's how we're going to change the culture and how we operate. And these are some things that are going to happen. I'll have a more, transparent conversation with the executive team and say, "We're not united. We're gonna change overnight. We're gonna change really quickly. This is what we believe in. These are the 3 things we're gonna do. We're gonna start doing that as of tomorrow." When you give executives an opportunity to make those changes and to choose to make those changes, you're telling them, like, "We're all gonna be on the same page." If the few executives don't wanna do it and they continue to have bad behaviors and they're just leading the way they want, you gotta let them go. It's creating a really bad environment. Your employees are seeing what's happening, and all the other executives that are in line are gonna look and go, "Wonder what the CEO is gonna do about those 2." Those 2 that never listen, those 2 that always have the bad behaviors, those 2 that always get away with everything. You do have to kind of set an example, and I'm not saying that, like, I'm the stern HR lady coming in, but a lot of founders that I've seen where things have gone bad is, like, they had no discipline within the organization. If you have discipline with your most junior BDR team and you expect them to hit targets, for sure have some discipline with your executive team. They're getting the highest paid. salaries. They have the loftiest titles. They have the most autonomy. But if they can't even do what the CEO expects, it's time for them to go, you know?
Yeah. No. Okay. So it makes sense. And then so you got into startups, and working in startups very different than corporate world, but also challenging in its own way.
Challenging because you're now working mostly with founders. When you work with operating CEOs, it's a different ballgame. Like they've been trained to be leaders. They had executive coaches. They have MBAs. They've taken leadership development. Um, when you work with founders, they're people who have had a great idea. They're entrepreneurs and they're building a business. But throughout the journey of being a founder, they have to move into the CEO title. They have to operate better. They have to gain leadership skills. They have to be awesome communicators, and they have to set the tone in the organization. And sometimes, you work with founders that have really immature mindsets. I had one founder who, in his executive meetings, he would always have this Nerf ball, and he would like squeeze it. And I thought, oh, it must be like his stress ball. When he's stressed, he like squeezes it. No, if an executive said something that he didn't like, he would take it and throw it at you, and it would hit your head. And I was like, "Excuse me? Like, did you just throw a Nerf ball at your CFO?" And he would be like, "Yeah, because he said the wrong thing. That was just stupid." And, like, honestly, who would wanna work at a
No,
company like
completely.
that?
It's like,
And so
yes, the whole point of you hiring a CFO is to tell you smart things. And okay, fine. If the CFO is telling you stupid things over and over again, then you should fire them. Like they're maybe not the right
yeah,
CFO. But no, you don't like you don't throw. I mean, first of all, you don't throw a Nerf ball, but like that's just crazy. Um, so so I want to be cognizant of time for a second here. Like, let's go through like
yeah,
kind of quick like lightning round and things. Like, what trait do you
okay.
like instantly look for in a founder? There's a certain trait.
You know what? A founder has to be able to have self-awareness. Like, without the self-awareness, they're gonna fail at many
Right. They'll throw
things.
a Nerf ball at your executive team, basically.
Yeah.
One red flag you never ignore.
My gut instinct about people. And I know people say like, "Oh, it's just intuition." No, it's not. It's pattern recognition.
Yeah. Um, Best hiring decision you've ever made.
Sometimes it's the underdog. They don't have the titles in their resume, and it's not the Ivy League school, but those underdogs are gonna work their ass off because they have something to prove, and, I've hired a lot of those.
Worst hiring mistake you've seen.
Hiring friends and family, just because you knew them for a long time doesn't mean they're gonna be the best performers for your
For
company.
sure. And then of course you have to figure out a way to fire them too. And that's even more awkward probably.
Exactly. That's the hard thing of hard things.
Yeah. Most underrated role in a startup.
I personally think it's the chief people officer. And this is where you can create an amazing company together in partnership with the CEO, but the CEO has to believe in the right person for this role, which is sometimes hard.
Right. You really need to find the right person who's that like that second hire at Netflix sort of right person who's perfect for it
Yeah.
and can really build that. But otherwise you get the wrong person, they're gonna try to build a culture that's not your own. And then it becomes
Yeah.
probably
Fluffy pizza parties.
yes. One relationship that changed your career.
I met a billionaire in an elevator, and he was the second richest man in Canada. The elevator was going from the ground floor to the 18th floor, and in those seconds that happened, he asked me, "What do I do?" And he just asked me like 3 questions, and I answered him, and the next day, HR called me and said, "We wanna come see you. You've been asked to come work in the chairman's office." And I said, "Why? Like, what did I do?" And they said the chairman was so impressed by, how you talked in the elevator that he wants you to come work in his executive office. And at the time, I was very young, and it was the greatest experience I ever had because if you have an opportunity to share what you're thinking to the richest man that you could possibly meet, do the best job that you can, and you never know where you could end up.
I know. Look, and but that's also partially being prepared and being smart and being thoughtful and being ready for that, which once again, as we talked about, a lot of people are not. Is there any advice that you would have given like your younger self? Like if you were like giving your younger self advice, what would that be advice have been?
Yeah, I always say, you've gotta have confidence, and every day our confidence, it gets whittled down because you get rejected, you have imposter syndrome, you think there's someone better than yourself, a Jeff Bezos over there. But the reality is, with confidence, you can conquer anything. I never thought that I would be a chief people officer. I remember I met a summer student once when I was really young, and he said, "One day you're gonna be a chief people officer." And we both laughed. I'm like, "That is so funny." And it actually happened. You have to have the confidence to believe in yourself, even if you think that it's impossible, and you can probably achieve what you want.
Yeah, I love that. Um, and on that note, I kind of always end on a question around like, if there's a single piece of advice, and maybe it's sort of the same advice you just gave, but it could be different, for what to achieve excellence as an entrepreneur. What is that excellence? Like, what is that piece of advice to achieve that level of excellence?
Work harder than anybody else. If you care about something so much, if it's your company and you're the founder, you have to work harder than anybody else. You have to research things. You have to look at, what companies are 2 steps ahead of you. You have to look at people who have done things better than yourself. You've got to really put that work in, and I don't think a lot of people do. They wanna be successful, but they don't wanna put the work into it. When you're a really hard worker and you get used to that, it becomes part of your DNA, and in that sense, you could do anything really well because 'cause you're just a hard
Yeah,
worker.
I totally. I feel that way a lot. People are always shocked because I work basically like 6 days a week and have for a really long time. And
Yeah,
also working like 12-hour days most days. People are always shocked at it, like, oh my God, so much. I'm like, dude, like this is just normal for me. Like I don't actually know. Like it might not be healthy for me overall, but like I don't really know another vibe of what else
yeah.
to do. In that hopefully that's led to certainly some level of success in my life. There's a lot more for me to achieve and things like that. But I agree, like hard work is so critical. Um,
Yeah.
Christine, like how can people get in touch, learn more about 5 to 9, all the other good stuff if they want to learn more or just talk about culture with you?
Yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn, Christine Song, I'm there, and we have a website, 5to9.com, 5to9society.com, and I would love to chat with anybody who wants to learn more.
Thank you so much for being on. Your time is so precious and it means a lot that you spend some of it with me and my audience.